Samantha Markle drags Meghan over Prince Louis' birthday and Archie controversy. What if I told you that a single, innocent, gap-toothed smile from a 7-year-old boy in the quiet English countryside managed to trigger a multi-million-dollar, highly coordinated media retaliatory strike from across the Atlantic? What if the war between the House of Windsor and the Montecito exile court is no longer being fought with grand tell-all memoirs or high-stakes lawsuits, but with baby teeth? Hold on to your seats because we are diving headfirst into Toothgate, the most bizarre, hilarious yet deeply calculated PR clash the royal world has ever witnessed. Just as the global media erupted with pure joy over Prince Louis's adorable, gap-toothed 7th birthday portrait, Meghan Markle suddenly took the stage at a high-profile summit in New York City. Her massive, show-stopping revelation? That her son Archie was also about to lose his very first tooth. Is this the ultimate motherly coincidence? Or is it a masterclass in spotlight-stealing strategic media jacking? Now Meghan's outspoken half-sister Samantha Markle is stepping into the ring, absolutely blasting the Duchess for what she calls a desperate, pathological obsession with overshadowing the royal family. Was this a calculated distraction to keep the spotlight firmly on California, or did Meghan genuinely just have the tooth fairy on her mind? We have the exclusive breakdown, the history of these bizarrely timed releases, and the devastating analysis from inside the Markle family circle that you cannot afford to miss. To truly understand the sheer gravity of this latest transatlantic media collision, we must first strip away the polished veneer of Hollywood public relations and look at the raw, undeniable anatomy of what went down on that fateful morning. The stage was set in the most idyllic way possible. Over in the United Kingdom, the Prince and Princess of Wales did what they have done with flawless, universally adored consistency for years. They released a birthday portrait of their youngest child, Prince Louis, to mark his 7th birthday. It was a picture of pure, unadulterated childhood innocence. There was Louis sitting on a log, wearing a simple blue checked shirt, sporting that iconic, massive, gap-toothed grin that instantly melted the hearts of millions. Within seconds of the photo hitting the wires, social media went into an absolute frenzy. Headlines across the globe were entirely dominated by one thing: Louis's toothless smile. It was a PR home run, a moment of uncomplicated, wholesome joy for a British royal family that has otherwise been battered by years of intense public scrutiny, health scares, and high-profile family fallouts. It was supposed to be Louis's day, an uncontested 24-hour window where the youngest royal child got to bask in the warm global spotlight. But if you have been paying attention to the royal soap opera for the last several years, you already know the golden rule of this narrative. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is ever allowed to remain uncomplicated for long when the Montecito camp is watching. Just as the world was collectively gushing over Louis's missing teeth, the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, practically manifested out of thin air on a stage in New York City. Clad in an impeccably tailored, ultra-expensive designer suit, looking every bit the high-powered global entrepreneur, she sat down for a high-profile summit interview. Now, one would think a talk at a prestigious business summit would focus on philanthropy, global impact, or perhaps her highly anticipated new lifestyle brand. But no. Right on cue, with the kind of theatrical precision that would make a seasoned Broadway director weep with envy, Meghan leaned into the microphone, flashed her signature, camera-ready smile, and dropped a personal bombshell. She told the audience, with a heavy dose of maternal warmth, that her own son Archie was about to lose his very first tooth that exact same week, and that she was desperately praying she would make it back to California in time to witness it. The crowd cooed, the cameras flashed, and across the Atlantic, the collective jaws of royal commentators hit the floor. The distraction was served fresh and hot, right in the middle of Prince Louis's birthday news cycle. This is where the plot thickens to a nearly comical degree, because the reaction from the public and the media was instantaneous. To the casual observer, it was just a sweet, relatable mom moment. But to those who have studied the Duchess's media patterns with a magnifying glass, it felt like a highly calculated, surgically precise PR counterstrike. Enter Samantha Markle, Meghan's famously estranged half-sister, who has made it her life's mission to act as the ultimate, unfiltered whistleblower of the Markle family. Samantha did not just criticize the move, she absolutely went nuclear. In a series of blistering, highly publicized takedowns, Samantha blasted Meghan, claiming that this was not some happy, cosmic coincidence of childhood development. Samantha argued that Meghan is so deeply, pathologically obsessed with the Princess of Wales and the entire royal hierarchy that she simply cannot tolerate a single day where the spotlight is not shining directly on her or her children. According to Samantha, Meghan is on social media constantly, monitoring every single trend, every hashtag and every headline. The moment Prince Louis's toothless grin started trending globally, Samantha claims the distress signals went off in Montecito, and the decision was made to inject Archie's tooth into the global conversation to split the narrative. To make matters even more controversial, critics immediately began pointing out the incredible hypocrisy of the situation. For years, Harry and Meghan have passionately, fiercely argued for their children's right to absolute privacy. They stepped down from royal duties, fled the United Kingdom, and filed numerous lawsuits against paparazzi, all under the banner of protecting Archie and Lilibet from the toxic, invasive glare of the public eye. We have barely ever seen official, clear photos of these children. We usually only get artsy black and white shots of the backs of their heads, a stray elbow, or a blurred silhouette in a highly produced Netflix documentary. Yet, the moment a rival royal child is trending for a natural childhood milestone like losing a tooth, suddenly all those strict privacy boundaries seem to evaporate. Suddenly, Archie's personal dental milestones are fair game for public consumption on a global stage in front of hundreds of journalists. Samantha Markle pointed this out with brutal sarcasm, asking how a couple that claims to live in constant fear of media intrusion can so casually weaponize their children's personal lives as conversational currency the second they need a quick press boost. But of course, this is not just about a single tooth. This is about a deeply entrenched, multi-year pattern of behavior that has left seasoned royal watchers entirely exhausted. If you look back at the history of the Sussexes' public announcements, the timing is almost never accidental. It is a game of chess played through press releases. Whenever the royal family has a major positive milestone, whether it is a wedding, a birthday, a major charity initiative, or a state visit, without fail a competing announcement, a new product teaser, or a dramatic leak story emerges from the California camp. It is a relentless, exhausting cycle of upstaging that has turned what should be family relationships into a toxic corporate rivalry. The public reaction has been deeply polarized. On one side, you have the loyal Sussex squad, who argue that Meghan is a devoted modern mother who is simply sharing a sweet, normal update about her son, and that the British press is suffering from a collective delusional case of obsession by linking it to Prince Louis. On the other side, you have the traditionalists and royal experts who see this as a textbook example of narrative hijacking. What makes this specific incident so fascinating is the sheer audacity of the timing. Prince Louis's birthday is not a moving target. It is a fixed date on the calendar, known to the public and the media months in advance. Meghan's team, which consists of highly paid, incredibly experienced American PR crisis managers and image consultants, would have known exactly what the royal family's media schedule looked like for that week. To suggest that none of these seasoned professionals realized that launching a missing tooth anecdote on the exact day of a missing tooth royal portrait would cause a massive media storm is, frankly, insulting to their intelligence. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew it would create a parallel news cycle, ensuring that every article written about Prince Louis's birthday would have to include a paragraph referencing Archie's upcoming milestone. It was a brilliant, albeit deeply cynical way to piggyback on the guaranteed viral traffic of the British monarchy. And as the online debates began to reach a boiling point, with hashtags clashing and commentators taking sides, the spotlight began to shift away from the quiet Norfolk countryside where Louis was celebrating, and right back to the glittering high-stakes drama of the New York summit, where the Duchess was preparing to unveil even more about her supposedly perfect, blissfully happy new life. The glittering lights of Manhattan and the high-powered applause of the Time 100 summit provided the perfect backdrop for this carefully staged narrative shift, allowing the conversation to transition seamlessly from a simple family anecdote to a grand, sweeping statement about Meghan's ultimate triumph over her past. As she sat on that stage looking out at an audience of global leaders, corporate executives, and media elite, she didn't just stop at the story of Archie's loose tooth. She went much further, delivering what many have called a highly theatrical declaration of personal victory. With that signature luminous smile and an air of absolute contentment, she looked directly into the cameras and made a stunning confession. She is officially the happiest she has ever been in her entire life. She spoke of her supportive husband, her joyful, healthy children, and the beautiful, safe, free life they have built for themselves in California. To the casual listener, it was a heartwarming testimony of a woman who had successfully navigated a difficult transition. But to the analytical minds watching from across the globe, this statement was a massive loaded grenade tossed directly at the gates of Buckingham Palace. The immediate question that began circulating through the media was simple. What does it actually mean to be the happiest you have ever been in your entire 43 years of life? Critics were quick to point out the math behind this claim. By declaring this exact moment in a Manhattan conference room as her absolute peak of lifetime happiness, Meghan was implicitly retroactively downgrading every other major milestone in her public and private history. Was she happier now, talking about her lifestyle brand to a room of corporate sponsors, than she was on that gorgeous, sunny day in Windsor when she stood in a breathtaking Givenchy gown and married a prince of the United Kingdom in front of a global audience of tens of millions? Was she happier now than the day she welcomed her children into the world? Or was this hyperbole designed to serve a very specific, very urgent PR agenda? The contrast was not just striking. It was incredibly jarring for anyone who remembered the sheer scale of the global romance the world was sold just a few short years ago. The plot thickened when commentators began matching this new boundless happiness narrative against the incredibly dark, painful history the Sussexes have spent years detailing. It was, after all, this very same Duchess who sat on a sofa opposite Oprah Winfrey in 2021 and painted a picture of royal life that was nothing short of a gothic horror story. In that interview, which was watched by a staggering global audience, she described an institution so cold, so hostile, and so utterly devoid of human empathy that she found herself in a state of deep, terrifying despair. She spoke of severe mental health struggles, of feeling entirely trapped, unprotected, and silenced by the palace machine. It was a narrative of profound suffering that shocked the world and caused immense, arguably permanent damage to the reputation of the British monarchy. Yet now, with a casual wave of her hand and a beaming smile, she declares that she has effortlessly transitioned into absolute peak bliss. This sudden pivot has led to intense skepticism, with critics like Samantha Markle suggesting that the performative misery of the past and the performative joy of the present are simply two sides of the same transactional coin. Samantha and other outspoken critics argue that when Meghan needed to justify her departure from the royal family, secure multi-million-dollar production deals, and build a brand based on victimhood, the narrative of trauma was dialed up to 10. Now, as she attempts to transition into a lifestyle guru selling luxury jams, high-end homeware, and polished podcast content, the trauma narrative is quietly being shelved in favor of a glossy, aspirational aesthetic of Californian wellness. This rapid shifting of gears has left many wondering which version of the Duchess is real, or if both are merely highly calculated public relations characters deployed to suit the financial and social needs of the moment. While Meghan basked in the warmth of the New York spotlight, the cameras also captured a parallel story that was, in many ways, far more telling than anything she actually said. Standing slightly to the side, waiting in the wings, and occasionally posing for the mandatory red carpet photographs, was Prince Harry. For royal watchers who have followed the Duke of Sussex since his youth, the images coming out of New York that day were deeply bittersweet, if not outright tragic. This is a man who was once the undisputed charismatic darling of the British public. He was the war hero who served 2 active tours in Afghanistan, the co-founder of the globally respected Invictus Games, and a prince who possessed a rare, natural ability to connect with everyday people on a deeply human level. He was a force of nature in his own right, commanding global attention wherever he walked. But in New York, the visual dynamic had completely shifted. Harry appeared to many observers as a quiet, somewhat somber supporting actor in the grand theater of his wife's solo endeavors. The irony of this visual setup was not lost on anyone. When Harry wrote his explosive, record-breaking memoir, he titled it with a single heavy word: spare. The entire thesis of his grievances against his family was that he refused to live in the shadow of his brother, Prince William. He hated being the secondary character, the backup option, the royal arm candy whose primary purpose was to support the main heir. He fled the United Kingdom, broke ties with his father, and alienated his lifelong friends, all under the banner of finding his own voice, establishing his own independence, and escaping the suffocating trap of being the perpetual runner-up. Yet, as he stood quietly in that Manhattan venue, watching his wife command the stage, the press, and the corporate partners, many couldn't help but notice that he had seemingly traded one secondary role for another. Only this time he wasn't playing second fiddle to the future King of England. He was playing second fiddle to a global lifestyle brand. This visual narrative has fueled a wave of commentary about the quiet, slow-burning reality of Harry's new life in exile. While Meghan appears entirely energized by the fast-paced, high-stakes world of American celebrity and corporate sponsorship, Harry often cuts a lonely, detached figure at these glittering events. Commentators have pointed out that despite his royal title and his global fame, he no longer has the institutional backing, the military connections, or the deep-rooted cultural purpose that once defined his entire existence. He is a prince without a country, navigating a highly commercialized landscape where his value is often measured solely by his association with his wife's media ventures. This stark contrast between the Duchess's radiant, triumphant happiness and the Duke's subdued, almost resigned demeanor has become a major focal point for those analyzing the true private cost of their dramatic departure from royal life. As the public began processing these complex visual cues, the focus of the controversy inevitably shifted toward the wider, far more systemic allegations of calculated media manipulation that have come to define the Sussex brand. The tooth story, the happiness declaration, and the quiet presence of Harry were not isolated incidents. They were part of a larger, highly coordinated effort to completely redefine the narrative surrounding the couple. But as the New York summit drew to a close and the couple prepared to make their journey back to their sprawling mansion in Montecito, the backlash was already mounting. The internet was flooded with intense debates, and the mainstream media began asking tough, uncomfortable questions about the ethics of using family milestones as shields against public criticism. The stage was set for a massive, unavoidable collision between the polished, carefully managed public image the Duchess had just presented and the harsh, unfiltered realities of her highly controversial public track record. The transition from the glittering, high-intensity corporate stages of New York back to the quiet, ultra-exclusive enclave of Montecito marks the beginning of what can only be described as a critical tipping point in the public relations battle. As the private jet carrying the Duke and Duchess of Sussex touched down in California, the digital world they left behind was already in a state of absolute meltdown. The juxtaposition of a young royal prince's genuine childhood milestone in the United Kingdom and a highly synchronized corporate-sponsored anecdote about a loose tooth in Manhattan had exposed a massive, deep-seated fatigue among the global public. For years, the mainstream media had treated the ongoing feud between the California exiles and the British monarchy as a high-stakes, dramatic chess match. But with this latest development, the tone shifted from fascination to outright mockery. The public was no longer just taking sides. They were actively laughing at the sheer, desperate absurdity of the timing, and that laughter is the one thing a carefully curated global brand cannot survive. This shift in public perception has triggered what inside sources claim is a state of quiet panic behind the scenes in the Sussex's communications department. For a PR machine that commands millions of dollars and employs some of the most aggressive crisis management minds in the United States, the realization that their tactics have become entirely predictable is a devastating blow. The classic playbook, which relies on deploying highly personal, emotional family anecdotes to counter negative press or steal the spotlight from the royal family, is no longer working. Instead of eliciting warm, relatable sympathy, Meghan's mention of Archie's upcoming tooth milestone was met with immediate, cynical eye rolls. The public instantly connected the dots, recognizing it as an intentional attempt to dilute the positive coverage surrounding Prince Louis's birthday. When a PR strategy becomes so transparent that the average social media user can predict the exact timing and nature of your next move, the magic is gone, leaving behind only the cold, mechanical gears of a desperate media operation. The consequences of this tactical misfire are stretching far beyond the realm of internet gossip and royal commentary. In the high-stakes world of Hollywood and global corporate sponsorship, credibility is the ultimate currency. Major entertainment executives, streaming giants, and venture capitalists who initially rushed to sign multi-million-dollar deals with the Sussexes are reportedly watching this ongoing circus with growing concern. The appeal of Harry and Meghan was always built on the allure of their royal status, their dignity, and their connection to a historic institution. But by constantly engaging in petty tooth-for-a-tooth media squabbles with royal children, the couple is slowly but surely stripping away their own prestige. They are transitioning from high-value global figures into reality television-style personalities who rely on cheap, daily tabloid drama to remain relevant. For major brands looking to partner with elite, aspirational figures, this descent into constant, low-level public controversy is an absolute deal-breaker, threatening the very financial foundation of their lifestyle empire. At the center of this gathering storm sits the incredibly complex, highly scrutinized dynamic between Meghan and her outspoken family, particularly her half-sister Samantha Markle. Samantha's relentless public crusade against the Duchess has long been dismissed by supporters as the bitter, jealous ramblings of an estranged relative. But as the years go on and the patterns of behavior Samantha predicted continue to play out with uncanny precision, a growing number of people are starting to look at her warnings in a very different light. Samantha's core thesis has always been that Meghan is a master of self-curation, a woman who views every personal relationship, every family milestone, and every tragedy as a strategic asset to be deployed for maximum personal advancement. When Samantha pointed out the sheer, calculated nature of the New York speech, she wasn't just criticizing a single interview. She was validating a growing public sentiment that nothing coming out of the Montecito camp is genuine. This validation from a family member who knew the Duchess long before the titles and the global stage adds a heavy, inescapable layer of credibility to the criticisms, making it much harder for the Sussex PR team to dismiss the backlash as mere internet hate. While the Duchess continues to project an image of supreme, unshakable confidence, the reality of their isolation in California is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The dream of establishing a rival progressive court in Montecito, one that would command the same respect and influence as the British monarchy but without any of the constitutional duties, seems to be evaporating. The Sussexes find themselves caught in a hostile, exhausting cycle of their own making. They cannot return to the United Kingdom, where their popularity has plummeted to historic lows, and where the royal family has firmly closed ranks against them. Yet, they cannot fully integrate into the elite circles of Hollywood, where the prevailing sentiment is one of cautious avoidance. The modern celebrity elite is highly protective of its own image, and getting dragged into a toxic multi-generational royal feud is simply not good for business. As a result, the couple is left occupying a strange, isolated middle ground, surrounded by highly paid advisors but increasingly devoid of genuine, powerful allies in either the old world or the new. Looking ahead, the road for the Sussex brand appears fraught with immense, almost insurmountable challenges. The strategy of using their children as shields against public criticism is reaching its absolute limit. For years, they have maintained a strict, almost militant policy regarding the privacy of Archie and Lilibet, claiming that any public exposure would compromise their safety. But by selectively relaxing those rules to share intimate details like a loose tooth on a global stage, specifically when it serves a direct promotional or narrative purpose, they have severely weakened their own argument. Critics are already calling out the hypocrisy, and future attempts to claim the moral high ground on the issue of media privacy will undoubtedly be met with intense skepticism. The public is demanding consistency, and the glaring contradiction between their high-minded demands for privacy and their calculated, transactional use of family milestones is a flaw in their narrative that no amount of polished PR can fix. This extraordinary